The escape pod screamed through the canopy like a meteor wrapped in fire. Lieutenant Jake Morrison fought the controls as ancient trees exploded around him, each impact throwing him against the harness hard enough to crack ribs. The pod's systems were dead. No guidance, no brakes. Just gravity and bad luck dragging him down into the one place every species in the galaxy avoided. The Velthara forest. He hit something massive and the world went black. When Jake's eyes opened, pain radiated through his chest. The pod had crumpled like paper around him, smoke pouring from fractured seals. He slapped the emergency release and the hatch blew outward with a hiss of depressurizing air. The forest outside was wrong. Trees rose higher than skyscrapers, their bark shimmering with colors that didn't exist in normal space. The air tasted electric, sweet. Every instinct screamed at him to stay in the pod, but the radiation alarms were climbing fast. The core was breached. Jake pulled himself out and collapsed onto ground that felt too soft, too alive. His ribs protested every breath. Blood ran down his face from a gash above his eye. He tried his communicator. Static. Of course. He stumbled forward, using a twisted piece of hull as a crutch. The Velthara forest was quarantined by every major civilization. 14 exploration teams had entered over the centuries. None had returned. Command said it was cursed. The religious types called it a prison. Jake called it exactly where he didn't want to be. Something glowed ahead through the trees. Not firelight, not artificial. This was pure luminescence, pulsing like a heartbeat. Jake's training said turn around. His gut said the same. But the radiation counter on his wrist was approaching lethal levels. He needed distance from the pod. He pushed through undergrowth that moved away from him, branches that seemed to watch. The glow grew brighter. How it could have slipped outside of our perimeter is... His boots squelched through earth that sparkled with embedded crystals. Then the trees parted, and Jake stopped breathing. A woman floated in the center of a clearing, suspended in chains of pure light. Her eyes were closed, but her face showed absolute peace despite the bindings. She wore robes that looked woven from starlight itself. The chains connected to 7 massive stones arranged in a circle, each one carved with symbols that hurt to look at directly. Jake had seen a lot in 5 years of deep space combat. Alien species, exotic weapons, dimensional anomalies. This was different. The pod explosion echoed through the forest behind him. The shockwave knocked Jake forward, and he hit one of the stones with his shoulder. It cracked, just a hairline fracture, barely visible. The woman's eyes snapped open. They blazed gold. The chains shattered. The shockwave threw Jake 20 feet backward. He hit a tree trunk and felt something else crack inside him. The woman descended slowly, her feet touching ground for what looked like the first time in centuries. The chains dissolved into particles of light that swirled around her like fireflies before winking out of existence. She turned to face him, and Jake forgot how to breathe. Her presence filled the clearing like pressure before a storm. Beautiful didn't cover it. Terrifying came closer. Power radiated from her in waves that made his teeth ache and his vision blur at the edges. When she spoke, her voice layered over itself in harmonics that shouldn't be possible. A human freed me. Not a question. A statement of pure disbelief. Jake tried to stand, but his legs weren't cooperating. Look, I didn't mean to crash here. My ship got hit during a skirmish with the Krell near the border. I ejected and the pod just... You speak as if I care about your reasons. She moved closer and the grass beneath her feet turned golden. Do you understand what you have done? Broken some kind of alien prison? Jake managed to get upright using the tree. If you're going to kill me, make it quick. I've had a really bad day. Something flickered in her expression. Surprise, maybe. She tilted her head and studied him like he was a curious insect. You have no fear. I'm terrified. I'm just too tired to show it properly. The woman laughed and the sound made flowers bloom in fast motion around the clearing. The Krell attacked you?
Yeah.
3 destroyers jumped us during a supply run. My carrier didn't make it out. The pain in Jake's chest was getting worse. He touched his ribs and his hand came away bloody. Most of my crew didn't either. Her expression hardened. The Krell Dominion. They still exist then. You know them? I know everyone who contributed to my imprisonment? She raised one hand, and symbols appeared in the air around her fingers, rotating slowly. How long has it been? Since what? Since the great species of the galaxy bound me here and swore this forest would remain untouched until the stars burned cold. Jake blinked. I don't know what you're talking about. The Valthara forest has been quarantined for about 400 years, according to Galactic Council records. Nobody knows why. Just that ships disappear if they get too close. 400. She closed her hand and the symbols vanished. They kept their word longer than I expected. Who are you? The woman stepped closer, and Jake felt static electricity dance across his skin. I am Lyra. The Valthara called me goddess. The Krell called me destroyer. The council called me too dangerous to exist. She looked down at him with eyes that held distant galaxies. And you, small human, have undone the greatest prison ever constructed. An alarm shrieked in the distance. Jake recognized it immediately. His pod's reactor was going critical. They had maybe 2 minutes before it turned this entire clearing into a crater. We need to move. Now. Lyra glanced toward the wreckage without concern. You are injured. You cannot run. That reactor is going to explode and take half this forest with it. She regarded him silently for a long moment. Then she moved faster than his eyes could track. 1 second she stood 10 feet away. The next she had one arm around his waist, and the clearing was dissolving around them in a blur of impossible speed. They materialized on a cliff overlooking the forest, just as the pod detonated. The explosion rose like a miniature sun, vaporizing trees and sending a shockwave racing outward in all directions. Jake felt the heat even from this distance. Your kind builds destructive toys, Lyra observed. Your kind apparently gets locked up for being too scary. We all have our issues. She looked at him sharply, then laughed again. This time it sounded genuine. Perhaps the galaxy has changed more than I thought. She set him down carefully against a rock. Your injuries need attention. I'll live, probably. Jake winced as he adjusted his position. What happens now? You said I freed you from a prison. Are you going to start destroying stuff? Do you want me to? Preferably not. Then perhaps I will not. Lyra knelt beside him and placed her palm against his chest. Warmth spread through his body, pushing back the pain. His ribs shifted and he felt them knit back together. The gash on his head sealed. In 30 seconds he felt better than he had in months. That's handy. You freed me, human. Intentional or not, you have earned a boon. She stood and looked out at the forest. But you have also created a problem. Every species that imprisoned me will know the moment they detect that explosion. They will come to verify the seals are intact. And when they find out you're loose? Lyra smiled, and it wasn't comforting. Then we discover if humanity is truly as impressive as breaking my prison suggests. The first ships arrived within the hour. Jake watched from the cliff as 3 massive vessels dropped out of hyperspace above the forest. Each one was the size of a city, their hulls marked with symbols he recognized from tactical briefings. Valthara dreadnoughts, the species that claimed this forest as sacred ground. They're scanning for the prison seals, Lyra said calmly. She hadn't moved from her position at the cliff's edge, seemingly unconcerned that enough firepower to glass a continent now floated directly overhead. When they realize you're free, what happens? War. She said it like she was commenting on the weather. The Valthara will call the council. The council will mobilize every fleet within 10 systems. They will attempt to kill me or imprison me again. Jake's mind raced through options. None of them good. Can they? No. Lyra turned to face him, and her eyes blazed brighter. But many will die trying. Your species included if they stand with the Council. Humanity isn't part of the Galactic Council. We're still considered too young, too aggressive. Jake stood up, testing his newly healed body. Everything worked perfectly. We're barely holding our own territory against Krell raids. Then you have no stake in this conflict. Except I'm the idiot who freed you. Jake pointed at the ships above. They're going to want answers. When they scan the crash site, they'll find human tech. They'll track it back to my carrier's last position. Earth becomes involved whether we want it or not. Lyra considered this. You think tactically. Rare for someone who crashes into forbidden forests. I was a tactical officer before they needed me in a cockpit. Jake watched as smaller craft began deploying from the dreadnoughts, heading toward the explosion site. We need a plan that doesn't end with my entire species getting blamed for breaking the galaxy's most important prison. What do you suggest? Before Jake could answer, his wrist communicator crackled to life. He stared at it in shock. The thing had been dead since the crash. Lieutenant Morrison, this is Captain Hendricks of the UES Valiant. We picked up your emergency beacon before it cut out. What's your status? Jake grabbed the communicator. Captain, you need to turn around right now. This whole sector is about to become extremely hostile. We're already in orbit, son. Detected 3 Velthara dreadnoughts moving into position above your location. Hendricks paused. They're demanding we leave immediately or be fired upon. Something about violating sacred space. Lyra moved close enough to speak into the communicator. Human Captain, your pilot has accidentally committed the gravest crime in galactic history. Evacuation is no longer an option. Static filled the channel for 3 seconds. When Hendricks spoke again, his voice was carefully controlled. Who am I speaking to? I am Lyra. 4 centuries ago, 17 species combined their strength to imprison me in this forest. Your lieutenant broke that prison. The Velthara are currently verifying this fact. And when they confirm it, they will attempt to destroy us both. More static. Jake could imagine the chaos on the Valiant's bridge right now. Morrison, is this accurate? Yes, sir. I crashed into some kind of ritual site, broke a seal. She's been locked up down here since before humans left Earth. Wonderful. Hendricks exhaled slowly. The Velthara are giving us 10 minutes to produce you for questioning or they open fire on my ship. We've got 40 crew and no backup within 3 days' travel. Jake looked at Lyra. She met his gaze without expression. Captain, I'm coming up, Jake said. Alone. Tell them you'll hand me over for questioning. Negative. I'm not sacrificing crew to hostile aliens. You're not sacrificing anyone. Just buy me time to reach your ship. Jake cut the connection before Hendricks could argue. Lyra raised an eyebrow. You intend to surrender yourself? I intend to keep my people alive. Jake started walking toward the forest. You can disappear. Do whatever goddesses do when they're free. I'll take responsibility for the crash. She appeared in front of him, moving so fast she seemed to teleport. They will execute you. Probably. This does not concern you? Of course it concerns me. But 40 crew members versus 1 pilot is basic math. Jake stepped around her. Thanks for healing me. Try not to destroy too much when the shooting starts. Lyra stared at him for a long moment. Then she did something unexpected. She smiled. You would sacrifice yourself for your crew, your species, people you have never met. She touched his shoulder and power rippled through the air. The Council imprisoned me because I refused to let them exterminate developing species. They called it mercy. I called it genocide. What does that have to do with? It means, Jake Morrison, that I choose to stand with humanity. Lyra's form began to glow. And the Velthara are about to learn why that is a very poor decision on their part. She launched into the sky like a comet. The explosion lit up the sky like a second sun. Debris rained down in burning streaks, while the remaining 2 dreadnoughts scrambled to track Lyra's position. She moved through space without a ship, without armor, just raw power that bent physics around her like tissue paper. Jake activated his communicator. Captain Hendricks, you need to get the Valiant clear of this airspace immediately. What the hell just happened up here? The goddess I accidentally freed just declared war on the Velthara. Jake watched as Lyra dodged a barrage of plasma fire that would have vaporized a battlecruiser. She's defending humanity now. Don't ask me why. Morrison, we're a frigate. We can't... The 2nd dreadnought split in half. No explosion this time. Just a clean separation, as if something had sliced through 3 miles of reinforced hull like warm butter. Lyra appeared in the gap, surrounded by a sphere of golden light that consumed everything it touched. Captain, please tell me you're moving. We're running emergency burn toward the jump point. ETA 4 minutes. Hendricks' voice was tight. The 3rd dreadnought is launching everything they have at her. Jake watched fighter craft swarm from the remaining ship like angry insects. Hundreds of them. each one capable of taking down smaller vessels. They converged on Lyra's position in a coordinated attack pattern that would have impressed any human tactician. She raised both hands and the fighters simply stopped, frozen in space as if time itself had paused. Then she clenched her fists and they crumpled inward, compressed into balls of scrap metal that drifted away harmlessly. The third dreadnought fired its main cannon. The beam was visible even from the planet's surface, a lance of concentrated energy designed to crack moons. It hit Lyra dead center. She caught it. The beam spread around her hands like water hitting a dam, dispersing into harmless light that scattered across the void. Lyra pushed forward, and the beam reversed direction, slamming back into the dreadnought's primary weapon. The entire forward section detonated in a cascade of secondary explosions. "They're retreating," Hendricks reported. "The last dreadnought just jumped to hyperspace." "They're going for reinforcements," Jake said. "How long until the Council can mobilize? Best guess? 12 hours before the first response fleet arrives. Maybe a full battle group in 24. Hendricks paused. "Morrison, get to the extraction point. We're not leaving you behind." Lyra descended from orbit in a controlled fall that ended with her landing beside Jake without disturbing a single blade of grass. She looked completely unbothered by the fact she'd just destroyed 3 capital ships. "Your captain is wise to flee," she said. "The Velthara were merely the watchers. The true architects of my prison will come next. The Council. 17 species working in concert. The Krell. The Atheron Collective. The Mordane Unity." Lyra gazed up at the stars. Each one commanded fleets that could burn solar systems. Together they were unstoppable. 400 years is a long time. Perhaps they have grown weak. She looked at him. Or perhaps they have grown stronger. Either way, they will come for me. And they will punish any species that aids me. Jake's mind worked through the implications. Earth doesn't have the fleet strength to fight the Council. We've got maybe 200 ships total spread across a dozen systems. The Krell alone outnumber us 10 to 1. Then humanity should stay clear of this conflict. You just vaporized 3 dreadnoughts while saying you're defending my species. The Council isn't going to care about our actual involvement. Jake activated his communicator. "Captain, what's the political situation with the Council right now?" "Tense. We've been requesting observer status for 3 years, but they keep stalling. Something about needing to prove we're civilized enough." Hendricks sounded bitter. "The Krell raids don't help our case." Lyra's expression darkened at the mention of the Krell. "They still attack you?" "Monthly, sometimes weekly. They hit our outer colonies, take resources, kill anyone who resists." Jake met her blazing gaze. "The Council calls it an internal dispute. Tells us to handle it ourselves or accept Krell dominance of the border regions. The Council always preferred order over justice." Lyra's hands glowed with building energy. "The Krell were slavers when I was free. I see they have not changed. Can you stop them? I can erase them from existence." She said it casually, like discussing the weather. "But doing so would confirm every fear the Council has about me. They imprisoned me because I intervened in conflicts they deemed necessary. Because I valued individual life over political stability." Jake understood immediately. "They'll say you're proving them right. That you're too dangerous to exist." "Yes." A new voice crackled over the communicator. Not Hendricks this time. The signal was stronger, clearer, and carried the weight of absolute authority. "This is High Chancellor Vorn of the Galactic Council. We are addressing the entity known as Lyra and the human who released her." Jake and Lyra exchanged glances. "We are listening," Lyra said. "Your freedom violates the Treaty of Sanctuary signed by 17 sovereign species to protect the galaxy from your destructive influence." Vorn's voice held no emotion. "Surrender yourself immediately for re-imprisonment or face total war." "And the human?" "The human will be tried for crimes against galactic stability. If found guilty, his species will face economic sanctions and military quarantine." Jake felt his blood run cold. Economic sanctions meant Earth's colonies would starve. Military quarantine meant the Krell could raid without opposition. Lyra looked at him with ancient eyes. "What would you have me do, Jake Morrison? I can fight them. I can win, but your species will suffer regardless. The weight of billions of lives pressed down on Jake's shoulders. He thought of his crew, his family back on Earth, the colonies struggling to survive on the frontier. Then he thought about the Krell raids, the Council's indifference, 400 years of imprisonment for defending developing species. Jake made his choice. High Chancellor Vorn, this is Lieutenant Morrison. Humanity doesn't recognize your authority to imprison someone for protecting the weak. We're standing with Lyra. Silence filled the channel. Then Vorn spoke again, and this time his voice held ice. So be it. Humanity is now at war with the Galactic Council. Captain Hendricks was screaming before Jake could respond. Morrison, what have you done? You don't have the authority to declare war on behalf of our entire species. I know, sir. Jake kept his voice steady despite his racing heart. But they were going to punish us anyway. At least this way we choose our side. Our side? We're 40 crew on a frigate against the entire Galactic Council. Hendricks took a sharp breath. I'm reporting this to Fleet Command immediately. They'll court-martial you if we survive the next 24 hours. The channel cut out. Lyra watched Jake with an expression he couldn't read. You understand what you have committed your people to? A fight we were always going to have. Jake looked up at the stars where Council fleets were probably already mobilizing. The Krell have been testing us for years. The Council watched and did nothing. Maybe it's time someone pushed back. Brave words from someone whose species barely controls their own solar system. We went from wooden ships to faster-than-light travel in 500 years. We're fast learners. Jake met her eyes. And now we've got a goddess on our side. That's got to count for something. Lyra laughed, sharp and sudden. You truly believe you can win this? I believe we can make them regret starting it. Before she could respond, the sky above them tore open. Not a hyperspace jump. Something else. Reality itself seemed to split apart as a vessel emerged that made the Velthara dreadnoughts look like toys. The ship was organic. Living metal that pulsed with bioluminescent patterns. Tentacles longer than city blocks extended from its central mass, each one tipped with weapons that hummed with barely contained energy. Atheron world ship, Lyra said quietly. They arrived faster than expected. Is that bad? The Atheron Collective doesn't negotiate. They don't warn. They simply eliminate threats with overwhelming force. She raised her hands as golden energy began to swirl around her. This will be unpleasant. The world ship fired. 100 beams of violet light lanced down from orbit, each one targeting Lyra's exact position. Woo. She threw up a barrier and the planet shook from the impact. The ground beneath Jake's feet cracked. Trees for miles around burst into flame. Run, Lyra commanded. I'm not leaving you to... Run or you will die. Her voice carried absolute certainty. I cannot protect you and fight simultaneously. Jake ran. He made it 50 yards before the second barrage hit. The shockwave lifted him off his feet and sent him tumbling into a ravine. He landed hard. The breath knocked from his lungs. Above him, Lyra rose to meet the world ship, leaving a trail of golden fire. She moved like lightning given form. The Atheron fired again and she was already gone, appearing beside one of the tentacles. She grabbed it with both hands and tore. The appendage separated with a sound like rending metal. Acidic fluid sprayed into space. The world ship screamed. The sound carried even through the vacuum. A psychic wail that made Jake's ears bleed. More tentacles whipped toward Lyra, but she was already moving, dancing between attacks that could level mountains. She reached the central mass and drove both fists into its hull. Light erupted from the impact point, spreading across the ship's surface like a virus. The Atheron's weapons fell silent. Its tentacles went limp. Then the entire vessel began to glow from within. No, Lyra's voice carried across the distance, filled with sudden urgency. They would not dare. The world ship detonated. Not a normal explosion. This was a dimensional collapse, a weapon of last resort that created a localized black hole. Space folded inward, dragging everything nearby toward a point of infinite gravity. Lyra threw up her hands and reality bent around her. She was holding back a black hole through sheer force of will, her body blazing so bright Jake had to look away. The pull intensified. Rocks, trees, even light itself spiraled toward the event horizon. Jake felt himself sliding backward despite digging his heels into the ground. His communicator sparked and died. The air grew thin as atmosphere was sucked into the void. Then Lyra screamed. It wasn't pain. It was defiance. Pure rage given voice. The golden light around her exploded outward, overwhelming the black hole's pull. For 3 impossible seconds, she pushed back against the fundamental forces of the universe. And won. The black hole collapsed. The pull reversed in a shockwave that flattened everything for 20 miles. Jake slammed into a boulder and felt ribs crack again. When his vision cleared, Lyra was descending slowly, her glow dimmed but still present. She landed beside him and immediately placed her hand on his chest. The familiar warmth spread through his body, fixing the damage. They tried to kill me with a dimensional weapon, she said, her voice tight with anger. The Atheron sacrificed an entire world ship and its crew just to eliminate me. Did it work? Obviously not. She helped him stand. But it tells me how seriously the Council takes this threat. They are willing to sacrifice anything to see me imprisoned or dead. Jake's communicator suddenly crackled back to life. Wiles? The voice that came through wasn't Hendricks. Lieutenant Morrison, this is Admiral Catherine Shaw, commander of Earth's Third Fleet. I'm currently receiving reports that a human pilot started a war with the Galactic Council. Please tell me those reports are exaggerated. Jake winced. Admiral, I can explain. You have 10 seconds to convince me not to hand you over to the Council in chains. He looked at Lyra, who watched him with those ancient, knowing eyes. Then he thought about the Krell raids. The Council's indifference. The Atheron's willingness to sacrifice their own crew just to kill one person who dared challenge their authority. Admiral, the Council imprisoned someone for 4 centuries because she protected developing species from extermination. They're threatening humanity with economic sanctions and military quarantine for accidentally freeing her. The Krell have been raiding our colonies for years, and the Council calls it an internal dispute. Jake took a breath. I'm not saying I had the authority to declare war, but I am saying it was the right choice. Silence stretched for 5 long seconds. Then Shaw laughed. It was harsh and tired and real. You know what, Lieutenant? I've spent 3 years begging the Council for basic trade rights while they lecture us about civilization. Maybe it's time we showed them what humanity does best. What's that, ma'am? Win fights we have no business winning. Shaw's voice hardened. I'm mobilizing every ship we have. We're coming to your position. If the Council wants a war, we'll give them one they'll never forget. The Third Fleet arrived in stages over the next 6 hours. Jake watched from the Valiant's bridge as ship after ship dropped out of hyperspace. Destroyers, carriers, frigates, everything humanity could spare from defending the home systems. It looked pathetically small compared to what was coming. Admiral Shaw's flagship, the UES Defiant, took position at the fleet's center. She was an older woman, with gray hair and scars that spoke of battles won through determination rather than superior firepower. Her face filled the main view screen. Lieutenant Morrison, report to my ship immediately. Bring your new friend. Lyra materialized on the bridge without warning, startling half the crew. She'd returned to something resembling normal clothing, though her eyes still held that otherworldly glow. I can transport us both, she said simply. Before Jake could respond, they were standing in the Defiant's command center. The bridge crew jumped to their feet, hands moving toward weapons that would be utterly useless against Lyra. Shaw held up one hand. Stand down. If she wanted us dead, we'd already be atoms. She studied Lyra with the measured gaze of someone evaluating a tactical asset. So you're the goddess that just painted a target on humanity's back. I am Lyra, and you are the human who chooses to fight impossible odds rather than submit to tyranny. Lyra inclined her head slightly. We may have more in common than you think. Don't flatter me. I'm doing this because the Council was going to crush us eventually anyway. The Krell raids were just the opening move. Shaw pulled up a holographic display showing enemy fleet movements. Our intelligence says the Council is assembling a response force of 300 ships. They'll be here in 18 hours. Jake felt his stomach drop. 300 against our 42. 47 now. I pulled reinforcements from the outer colonies. Shaw's expression was grim. Still not enough to win a conventional engagement. Then we don't fight conventionally, Lyra said. She moved to the display and waved her hand through it. The hologram shifted, showing the local star system in detail. The Council will expect me to engage their fleet directly. They will position their strongest ships to counter my abilities, while overwhelming your forces with numbers. Can you take 300 ships? Shaw asked bluntly. Perhaps, but not without destroying this entire system in the process. Lyra manipulated the display, highlighting a dense asteroid field between them and the approaching Council fleet. The Atheron proved they're willing to use dimensional weapons. If I engage fully, they will deploy more. The resulting collapse could consume everything within 10 light years. Jake saw where she was going, so we need to force them into a position where they can't use superweapons without destroying themselves. Exactly, Lyra smiled. The Council's greatest weakness is bureaucracy. 17 species all convinced their way is superior. They will argue over tactics. Hesitate at critical moments. We exploit that hesitation. Shaw leaned forward. What did you have in mind? Over the next hour, they planned humanity's first major fleet engagement. It was insane, risky, built on assumptions about enemy behavior that might be completely wrong. It was also the only chance they had. We'll need to split our forces, Shaw said, studying the updated tactical display. A small group to draw them into the asteroid field, the main fleet hidden on the far side. I'll lead the decoy group, Jake volunteered immediately. Absolutely not. You're a tactical officer, not a... I'm the one who freed her. The Council wants me specifically. Jake pointed at the display. If I'm broadcasting on open channels, they'll focus on capturing me. It makes the bait more convincing. Shaw looked like she wanted to argue, but Lyra spoke first. He is correct. The Council's arrogance will make them believe a small human force is attempting to flee with me. They will pursue aggressively to prevent my escape. And when they realize it's a trap, then I stop holding back. Lyra's eyes blazed brighter. The asteroid field will limit their ability to maneuver. Your ships will have them in a crossfire, and I will ensure their dimensional weapons never activate. Shaw was quiet for a long moment. Then she nodded. Morrison, you'll take 5 ships, fast attack craft only. Lead them into the field and make them think you're running scared. Won't be hard. I am running scared. Good. Fear keeps you sharp. Shaw turned to her tactical officer. Deploy the fleet. Silent running protocols until the trap is sprung. And get me a direct line to Earth Command. They need to prepare for the possibility we all die out here. The next 12 hours were controlled chaos. Ships positioned themselves throughout the asteroid field, hiding in radar shadows and behind chunks of rock the size of cities. Jake took command of a squadron of interceptors, each one fast enough to outrun anything the Council had. Theoretically, Lyra spent the time moving between ships, placing what she called anchors on each hull, small points of golden light that would prevent dimensional weapons from targeting them directly. This will protect you from their most devastating weapons, she explained as she marked the Valiant. But conventional fire will still kill you easily. Do not become overconfident. Too late for that, Jake muttered. We're fighting 300 ships with 47 and a goddess. Overconfident doesn't begin to cover it. She actually smiled. Your species has survived this long through audacity. Why change now? The Council fleet arrived exactly on schedule. They dropped out of hyperspace in perfect formation. A wall of ships that stretched across visual range. Jake recognized Krell destroyers, Atheron support carriers, Velthara dreadnoughts, and at the center, something massive that made every other vessel look small. Is that what I think it is? Shaw's voice came through the squadron channel. Lyra's expression went cold. The Judgment, the Council's flagship. They brought High Chancellor Vorn himself. Is that bad? It means they intend to make an example of humanity, to show the galaxy what happens when you defy the Council's authority. Lyra's hands began to glow. They will not take prisoners. Jake activated his squadron's engines. Then let's make sure they remember this example for the wrong reasons. All ships, begin evasive maneuvers toward the asteroid field. Make it look panicked. His 5 interceptors broke formation and raced toward the asteroids, with Council ships immediately giving chase. Jake broadcast on open channels, his voice intentionally shaking. "This is Lieutenant Morrison to any human vessels in range. We're being pursued by overwhelming forces, requesting immediate assistance." The bait was set. Vorn's response came swift and cold. "Human vessels, surrender the entity, Lyra, and yourself for judgment. Refuse and your species will be eradicated." Jake cut the channel and grinned despite his terror. "They're coming in hot," his tactical officer reported. 50 ships breaking formation to pursue. "Perfect. Lead them deeper." The trap was ready to spring. The Council ships poured into the asteroid field like predators chasing wounded prey. Jake watched his scanner as 50 vessels committed to the pursuit, their formations tight and aggressive. Too aggressive. "Now," Shaw's voice cut through the channel. The asteroid field came alive. 42 human ships emerged from hiding simultaneously, engines flaring hot as they locked weapons on the Council fleet's exposed flanks. The enemy hadn't expected an ambush. They'd expected frightened humans running for their lives. They got fury instead. The first volley caught a Krell destroyer broadside. Its shields buckled under focused fire from 3 human frigates. The second volley punched through the hull. The ship died in silence, venting atmosphere and bodies into the void. But the Council recovered fast. Their ships scattered into defensive positions, returning fire with weapons that outranged anything humanity possessed. A human corvette exploded. Then another. "They're adapting," Shaw reported. "We need Lyra now." She was already moving. Lyra appeared in the center of the battlefield, a golden star against the black. The Council ships immediately redirected fire toward her, but she wasn't where their targeting computers predicted. She moved between dimensions, phasing through solid matter as plasma bolts passed harmlessly through empty space. She reached a Velthara dreadnought and placed both palms against its hull. The entire ship convulsed. Its engines died. Its weapons went dark. Then it simply fell apart, separating into component pieces as if someone had removed every bolt simultaneously. "Dimensional weapon charging," Jake's tactical officer shouted. "Atherin carrier, starboard side." The carrier's main cannon began to glow with that terrible violet light. If it fired, the resulting black hole would consume half the battlefield, including most of the human fleet. Lyra saw it too. She crossed the distance in a heartbeat and drove her fist into the weapon's charging chamber. The energy backfired catastrophically. The carrier's entire forward section crumpled inward as the dimensional collapse consumed the ship from within. It lasted 3 seconds before disappearing completely, leaving nothing but empty space. "Holy hell," someone whispered over the open channel. But the Council had numbers. For every ship Lyra destroyed, 3 more moved into position. They were coordinating now, timing their attacks to overwhelm her defenses. Jake watched as concentrated fire from a dozen vessels forced her into a defensive posture. "Morrison, they're trying to box her in," Shaw said. "We need to relieve pressure on her position." Jake's mind raced through tactical options. His squadron was fast but lightly armed. Going head-to-head with Council destroyers was suicide. "Unless, Admiral, what if we don't relieve pressure? What if we add more?" "Explain." "The Judgment hasn't moved from its position outside the asteroid field. Vorn's watching this play out, probably waiting to see if his forces can handle us without him committing his flagship." Jake pulled up scanner data. "If we threaten the Judgment directly, he'll have to respond. That pulls ships away from Lyra. That's insane. The Judgment could vaporize your entire squadron without breaking a sweat. Only if it catches us." Jake looked at his pilots, saw the same wild determination in their eyes that he felt. "We're faster than anything they have. We run straight at the flagship, make Vorn think we're desperate enough to try a suicide run, then break off at the last second. He'll have to divert forces to intercept." Shaw was quiet for exactly 2 seconds. "Do it. And Morrison, don't actually run into the damn ship." "No promises, Admiral." Jake's squadron broke from the main battle, engines screaming as they raced toward the Judgment. The massive vessel dominated the view screen, growing larger with every second. Its weapons tracked their approach but held fire. Vorn probably couldn't believe humans were actually stupid enough to charge his flagship. "All ships follow my lead," Jake commanded. "Break pattern on my mark." They were 5 seconds from impact when every weapon on the Judgment opened fire simultaneously. Space filled with energy beams and missile trails. Jake's interceptor twisted through the barrage, alarms screaming as shots passed within meters of his hull. "Mark!" The squadron scattered in 5 different directions. The Judgment's weapons couldn't track them all. But more importantly, Vorn had taken the bait. 20 Council ships peeled away from the main battle to protect their flagship. Lyra seized the opening. She unleashed power without restraint, no longer holding back to protect the human ships now that enemy forces had thinned. Golden light consumed a Krell battlecruiser. An Atheron support ship simply ceased to exist. A Velthara dreadnought tried to retreat and she ripped it in half with her bare hands. The Council fleet broke. Not a retreat, a rout. Ships scattered in every direction, some jumping to hyperspace without coordinating with the rest of the fleet. The careful formation collapsed into chaos. Only the Judgment remained, with Vorn's voice cutting through every channel. "Enough!" The word carried power that rattled Jake's bones. The fleeing ships stopped. The human forces held position. Even Lyra paused, turning to face the massive flagship. Vorn himself appeared on every view screen, his form towering and terrible. He wasn't humanoid. He was something older, something that existed partially outside normal space. His voice resonated with the authority of civilizations. "Lyra, humanity, you have won this battle through deception and desperation, but you cannot win the war. The Council commands resources beyond counting. We will return with 1,000 ships. 10,000. We will erase humanity from existence and imprison you in darkness eternal." Lyra rose to meet his gaze, her power blazing bright enough to hurt. "Then return, Vorn. Bring your thousands. Let the galaxy watch as the mighty Council throws everything it has against one species that dared to choose freedom over fear." Her voice carried across every channel. "And let them see you lose." Vorn's form flickered with rage. "You doom these humans to extinction." "No." Lyra gestured toward the human fleet. "I stand witness to their beginning. Humanity fought the Council's forces to a standstill with inferior numbers and technology. They did this not out of hatred, but because they refused to bow to tyrants. Every species watching this will remember. Some will wonder why they follow the Council at all." The silence stretched for 10 long seconds. Then, Vorn's image vanished. The Judgment turned and jumped to hyperspace without another word. The remaining Council ships followed. The battle was over. Jake slumped in his seat as the adrenaline drained away. Around him, cheers erupted across every human channel. They'd won! Against impossible odds, they'd actually won. Shaw's face appeared on his screen, and she was smiling. "Morrison, remind me to court-martial you later. Right now, buy yourself and your goddess a drink. You've earned it." Lyra materialized beside his ship, visible through the cockpit window. She was smiling too, and for the first time she looked almost human. Her voice came through directly into his mind. "You were right, Jake Morrison. Your species learns fast, and now the galaxy knows it." Jake grinned. "Think they'll come back with those thousands of ships? Perhaps. But they will also hesitate. Wonder if it's worth the cost. And in that hesitation, other species will find courage to question the Council's rule." She looked out at the stars. "You have started something that cannot be stopped. The Council's grip weakens. Freedom spreads, all because I crashed in the wrong forest." "No." Lyra's smile widened. "Because you crashed in exactly the right one." Earth's third fleet began the journey home, carrying news that would change everything. Humanity had stood against the Galactic Council and survived. The age of submission was over. The